Unspoken Issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Unspoken Issues podcast. Going back to 1992, June through September of 1992, as a matter of fact. And we're going to be talking Sleepwalker. Chris Armstrong's here. Are you ready to talk some Sleepwalker tonight?
For sure. Been waiting to talk Sleepwalker on this here podcast for a while.
Yeah, all right. And the man I know loves Sleepwalker the most out of everybody that I know, his name is Evan Bevins. Evan Bevins, are you ready to talk Sleepwalker tonight?
Jesse, when Sleepwalker's on the docket, Evan isn't too far away.
First off, admittedly have a bit of a blind spot for the adventures of Sleepwalker, especially in the 90s.
Blind spot's Daredevil's sidekick.
I got one issue of Sleepwalker. That was issue number 3. We were just talking about that before we went on air. I knew about the character, but I don't know much of what kind of adventures / misadventures he got into in the 90s. So, Evan, the first thing that we have to do before we get into anything else is you've got to introduce this character, Sleepwalker.
Well, Sleepwalker is, or at least claims to be, sort of a policeman in the mindscape. Protects the dimension that borders the minds of all intelligent beings. And somehow, and you'll have to forgive me, it's been a while since I read it, but through some misadventure, I believe involving a villain named Cobweb, he ended up trapped in the mind of one particular human, a college student and apartment building superintendent named Rick Sheridan. But the way it works, which is a very fun concept, is Sleepwalker only comes out when Rick's asleep.
Okay.
And consequently, when Rick wakes up, Sleepwalker is drawn back into his mind, which can be inconvenient if you're pursuing a villain or,
right,
fighting crime, or, just trying to go about whatever it is a denizen of the mindscape does in New York City late at night.
Eating his dinner. Could you imagine that? That would stink. Yeah.
They finally put him in the game HeroClix a while back, and there's actually a mechanic where, I don't know if it's every turn, but every so often you have to roll a die, and if you roll like a 1 or something, Rick wakes up, and you have to yoink Sleepwalker back to the starting area on the map.
Nice mechanic.
Leading up to this, I mean, Sleepwalker had done a lot of the things new heroes in the 90s did. He teamed up with Spider-Man. I think that's the first issue I got, is one where Sleepwalker's on the cover wearing a Spider-Man costume and pushing past Spider-Man to fight some crime. I believe they rescued a group of models that were abducted from a fashion show to hold their outfits for ransom. But and Sleepwalker used his warp beam. That pink beam that kind of comes out of his head is called a warp beam, and it can manipulate matter and twist things around. Not really supposed to use it on living things, though. Sleepwalker's very strong, and he can kind of levitate. It's a bit creepy looking. Has some folks unsettled, including a guy we'll meet in these pages, Tolliver Smith of the Office of Insufficient Evidence, which is a great name that I forgot about that. But so Sleepwalker had teamed up with different characters. He fought a group of villains called the Chain Gang in the Infinity Gauntlet. He was one of the heroes, kind of trying to hold things together on Earth while all that was going on. Although he kind of forgot about that. He ended up teaming up and fighting with Deathlock and Ghost Rider. Tolliver Smith and his folks seem to think Sleepwalker's a clear and present danger, and that comes into play here. But he's an alien who's feared and misunderstood, and is trapped away from home.
Okay. Created by Bob Budiansky.
Just looking him up, because I mostly associated him with Sleepwalker. He actually wrote a lot of the Transformers comics for Marvel, and I think contributed to a lot of the character bios on the packages. So he had a lot to do with the Transformers mythos. And if I'm not mistaken, at BotCon 2010, Hasbro named Budiansky as one of the first 4 human inductees in the Transformers Hall of Fame.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So there you go, a little Bob Budiansky trivia for you.
I'll remember that, as a matter of fact.
Well, I just didn't want to add to my collection of moments on these podcasts where you're like, Evan, what do you know about this guy? And I'm like, I don't know, and I've never heard of the internet. So
Brett Blevins also credited as co-creator, I assume, with of Sleepwalker. You know much about Brett Blevins?
I'm familiar with the name. It's pretty much credited straight to Budiansky, but I know Blevins drew all these. I'm
pretty sure after Sleepwalker, he did Ghost Rider for a while, briefly at least.
Okay.
And I think he did some Batman stuff in the 90s.
Yeah, a lot of Batman in the 90s.
Yeah, he's near and dear to my heart because he designed Prime for the Ultraverse.
Oh, there you go.
Although he never worked on any of the Ultraverse books, he is credited as like the guy who designed Prime's like costume and his look and stuff.
Yeah, and he did let's see, about over a dozen issues of Sleepwalker. So yeah, he did 10 of the first 11 issues, 15 of the first 17 issues. So
okay. Yeah, I was just going through here. The Ghost Rider issues you're talking about there, Chris, 32 through 37, 1992 through 1993. Yeah, it looks like he definitely late 80s through the 90s. He's got some books. Looks like, a nice little resume underneath him here. I noticed that Sleepwalker's first appearance was in Sleepwalker #1, April of 1991. So this is one of those cases where the character was created and introduced in its own in its first issue.
Yeah, it seems like Sleepwalker and Darkhawk, who we covered kind of recently, they were kind of part of a wave at Marvel in the early 90s where they were just producing so many new titles, and they were just kind of like New Warriors. Was a book that got, which they had appeared, I think, in Thor, but New Warriors was kind of brought along in the same, time frame. Like Marvel was just putting a lot of new characters out in the early 90s.
That's one reason Sleepwalker and Darkhawk appealed to me is as much as I love, Spider-Man and the X-Men and the Hulk and stuff like that, these were guys that, were like been created in my lifetime. I could get in on the, maybe not the ground floor, but pretty darn close.
Yeah, I'm the same way, like with a lot of those early 90s Marvel characters. And then when Image and Ultraverse came along, like, well, hey, these are all new, creations that I can kind of grow with instead of reading just the stuff from, that's been around since the 40s, 50s, 60s.
You mentioned Rick Sheridan, again, college student, a maintenance man at this apartment complex. Anything else about Rick Sheridan that kind of sets him apart outside of the Marvel U, or anything that you have that kind of adds to who Rick Sheridan is there?
Other than he just got dumped by his girlfriend Alyssa. When we talked about Darkhawk a while back, we talked about kind of the soap opera supporting cast, and Sleepwalker's a lot like that. He's got his own story that just kind of links in with the Marvel universe, but can also stand on his own too. Yeah, the only other trivia about Rick Sheridan is I was just looking up. There's a supporting character in Invincible named Rick Sheridan. And I was trying to figure that out because Robert Kirkman actually tried to revive Sleepwalker at Marvel in the early 2000s. He just did a single issue when Marvel was going to bring back its Epic imprint, and nothing really came of it. It just ended up in a one-shot that had a couple different stories. But then I was reading Invincible, and I'm like, wait, Rick Sheridan? That sounds familiar.
Yeah. The Mindscape. So there's two settings pretty much that happen throughout this book. There's going to be Earth. And we're all kind of familiar with that. So we kind of know what's getting on.
Done that.
Yep. We kind of know what's going on there. But the Mindscape is a little bit different. So Evan, tell the people what the Mindscape is. It's do your best to kind of try to describe that.
A lot of the Mindscape we'll see here is actually specifically in Rick's mind. My understanding of the Mindscape in Marvel is it's like, I think of it, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think of it kind of like as the astral plane. Kind of, it's a different plane of existence that's accessible through the mind, and that's where Sleepwalker's from, is the Mindscape, but he can't get out of Rick's mind.
Chris, tell me about. When did you find Sleepwalker? Were you reading this off the shelf? Tell me what was going on back then and made you gravitate. You wanted to talk Sleepwalker. You said you've been wanting to do this for a while. So why? Tell me why.
Sleepwalker is just kind of, to me, a classic Marvel 90s character, him and Darkhawk especially. I think my first Darkhawk issue was #2, and then I was off to the races on Darkhawk, and then later I got an issue #1 to fill in that gap there. But I was on Sleepwalker from the first issue. I picked it up. I remember thinking, like, the character was so weird looking on the cover of that first issue. Those were two of my favorite characters, in the early days of me collecting comics. And I stuck with Sleepwalker probably up through around the time this storyline ended. I think that I might have been a victim of the Huck's Convenience Store where I bought a lot of my comics. Maybe stopped carrying it, so I didn't really keep up with Sleepwalker much past this. But yeah, I really like the character, the concept, and just such a weird looking superhero and kind of an off the wall kind of status quo for a comic book.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely very much looks like an alien. He's got the green face, he's got the red eyes, cool costume. No nose. Yeah, no. He has completely absent of a nose. Got a purple gloves, purple boots, blue suit. What looks to be a purple. We'll call that. Is that a cowl? Is that a good or a cloak?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Or a hood.
Hood. Yep. So yeah, he definitely has a very, very interesting appearance. I mean, Evan, I don't know if you said this or not, but like, I mean, were you at the beginning Sleepwalker #1 forward, or did you come into the middle of the series?
No, my first issue was the one I was talking about earlier with Spider-Man, where Sleepwalker was wearing Spider-Man's costume. I don't remember. I mean, just the fact that it looked cool. I think I'd seen Sleepwalker here and there, but I stayed with it probably up to the early 20s. I don't know. I know he had a hollow foil chromium cover number 25 because it was the 90s. I think I got that, but I don't remember why, if it was just a budget thing or what. I did. This was one of the first series I went back and actually completed. I mean, in college, and then right after I would raid the dollar bins and stuff, and I eventually got all 33 issues.
Yeah, I'm looking at issue #2. That's the one with, is it 8-Ball?
Yeah, love 8-Ball.
The Sleepwalker Rogues Gallery is unlike any other.
Right.
Yeah, the Chain Gang, Lullaby, 8-Ball, and for people just listening, 8-Ball has a black and white costume. His helmet is a billiard ball, 8-Ball, and he flies around on a large flying 8-Ball and has a kinetically charged pool cue that he hits people with and pushes them back.
Now,
everything in the 90s involved kinetic energy.
Isn't his vehicle one of those, the rack, whatever you use to rack the balls on a pool?
I don't remember that. I'm going to have to, it should be.
I am immediately looking right now. 8-Ball.
If it's not, Bob Budiansky's kicking himself.
Yeah, I want to say it was like a triangle shape, like it's a pool rack.
And he still pops up every once in a while. Like I think you'll see him in the bar with no name occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there's been 2 8-Balls, or possibly 3. I'm googling. I'm going down a Marvel Wiki rabbit hole.
You need to head to marvelfandom.com and see what we got going on.
When we wrap up, we need to discuss the fan film as well.
I haven't watched that.
I haven't either.
Okay. I didn't even know one existed.
Yeah.
I don't know if they finished it yet or not, but they have worked on it. I've seen like special effects, like trial tests and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
8-Ball is in it. That's what reminded me.
Oh yeah,
he was a professional pool player from Minnesota.
Sending you guys a photo.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
That is definitely and there's people dressed up as.
Look at that rack.
Those are his henchmen. Yeah, look at that rack.
It's still a family podcast, but he started gambling as a way to get his mind off his job as a defense contractor and missile propulsion engineer for the Department of Defense.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking much 8-Ball tonight other than that. Because we're getting into color blindness. Now, this took place in the issues 13 through 16, cover dates June through September of 1992. Blinded by the Light, color blindness, part 1 of 4, dropped in issue 13, cover dated June of 1992. So, yeah, we just talked about Sleepwalker. Everybody knows who Sleepwalker is now. We did an introduction to who this character is. And he's upset because when he is allowed to roam the earth, he is misunderstood in just about every situation. Even though he's not a terribly evil guy in any way, everybody kind of just assumes that he potentially is a villain. Now, Rick Sheridan has some problems of his own with his ex-girlfriend, Alyssa. He still has some feelings for her, but she's mixed up with a real D-bag named Whitney, who doesn't really treat her well. One night, Rick goes to sleep, and Sleepwalker appears. While patrolling the streets, he discovers a beautiful ray of light emitting from the windows of a lab. It comes from a laboratory where scientists Charles Warren, or C.W. Fong, and Selena are testing a synthetic diamond with strange light powers. Sleepwalker is inexplicably drawn to it, even making friends with the scientists, but disappears as Rick awakens the next day. The next night, Sleepwalker's attraction to the light, specifically and now I said the orange spectrum. Is that what you guys saw?
That's what I saw.
Okay, all right.
The light that shall not be named, apparently.
Right. So yeah, his attraction to the light, Sleepwalker's back out. His attraction to that orange spectrum of the light. So he goes right back to the laboratory, but the attraction seems to grow stronger. And when Rick awakens, Sleepwalker is returned to Rick's mindscape, where he uncharacteristically demands Rick's subconscious make it so that he can return to the real world. So let me just stop there real quick and paint a picture for everybody. Sleepwalker goes out into the world, and then when he goes back into Rick's head, there is I don't know if I wouldn't call it a guide. It's just basically Rick's subconscious, who most of the time we see him is in the form of like 11, 12 years old. I don't know how old he is, but he's a young kid.
His inner child.
Right, exactly. Sleepwalker's like, I need to go back out. I need to get back to this light. You've got to go back to sleep. And at that time, you could tell there's a little bit of resistance. Obviously, Mindscape Rick is like, oh, man, I don't know if we can do this, but he ends up helping him out by recalling a memory and making Rick recall a memory of his like English teacher reading like really boring poetry. And so Rick's on this bus and he starts to fall asleep. So, of course, when he falls asleep, Sleepwalker returns and immediately heads to bask in the orange light of the diamond. Now, in the lab, he has an argument with C.W. Fong, Professor Fong, and heads to the streets. The orange light is now causing him to hallucinate, seeing things that are and are not there. Soon, Sleepwalker lusts for more of the diamond light and heads back to the lab, where he foils Selena's plan to steal the diamond with her thief boyfriend. However, when Selena grabs the diamond while the light is still pouring through it, there is an explosion, and Selena is turned into a being of rainbow light. Now, we don't get a name for Selena here at the end of this, do we?
I don't think we get that till the next
issue.
Next issue, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like right on the cover, too, if I remember right. Real quick, I'm going to put this out there before I forget. Creative team on this book. We already talked about the writer and the penciler. Inked by Mike Manley. Colors by Marie, I'm going to go with Javins. And lettered by Richard Starkings. So there we go. That is issue 1. I mean, right off the bat, I'm getting some drug addiction vibes. There is a special message in this here issue of Sleepwalker. We're getting around to it, but
it's even on the cover that I missed until I was just looking at it now. This is Sleepwalker. This is Sleepwalker out of his mind.
Man.
I wonder if the initial pitch for the cover was "This is Sleepwalker on drugs," and they're like, "Can't put that on the cover."
This is Sleepwalker on light. I have here in my notes, Sleepwalker is to light as Jesse Spano is to caffeine pills. like we talked about with Chris Powell and Darkhawk a while back, Rick Sheridan has a little bit of the Peter Parker DNA in him. The superhero stuff is messing up his personal life. You know, when Sleepwalker gets his subconscious to put him to sleep, he misses his chance to get back together with Alyssa, or at least have lunch with her. Classic Marvel storytelling there. And yeah, the drug metaphor just gets more and more obvious. I mean, not like they're trying to hide it or anything. You can see where this is headed. I don't know if you realize that when you're reading through Jesse, but when Sleepwalker starts hallucinating, we do get a great big image of 8-Ball. Yeah, alongside Cobweb and Lullaby and the Chain Gang and.
That's right. Yeah, it's like his Rogues Gallery show right up. So 8-Ball is in this in a sideways fashion in this issue.
But yeah, it's a fun way to start off. Just a good classic comic book stuff. Hero unappreciated for what he does, getting his alter ego into some trouble. Although usually the hero isn't just totally getting hopped up on full spectrum light dispersal or whatever, some kind of sciencey terms they threw in there.
Did Sleepwalker act as aggressively in any of the issues prior to this? Like, I mean, he is obviously out of his mind is a great way to put it, but he is, I mean, yelling and screaming at this kid. I don't know if he was doing that in previous issues with villains.
I always had, and like I said, it's been a long time since I went back and read this, but I always had the feeling that Sleepwalker was kind of reserved. I just wrote about over on my blog his appearance in Secret Defenders, and he was kind of prickly with Doctor Strange. And then, of course, the Punisher was cracking dad jokes in it, so I'm not sure how much, how accurate some of those portrayals were. But yeah, Sleepwalker could get a little touchy, but this definitely went in both directions with him grinning ear to ear over the light. I know Sleepwalker's a hero, but smiling Sleepwalker is a little creepy, so I can see why some people got freaked out. So he's I definitely always thought of him as a little more even keeled than this.
I wanted to know more about this diamond. Like,
it's just a diamond. I mean, it's just a MacGuffin, I think.
Well, I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on with this thing. Like, oh, hey, check this out. This can image project this over here through the green spectrum. And oh yeah, here the orange light here. It looks like it's orange again. Can drill through the. No, wait a second. Yeah, well, he does say this orange light.
Orange in that one, so
they do. Can burn through a solid block of steel, and then this other one, the blue light, strips all the heat and it makes everything freeze. I'm like,
I thought green was willpower and blue was hope. But, oh no, wait, that's DC.
Oh, wrong.
It seemed to me like the diamond was just like a conduit for like the machinery or whatever.
Okay. Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, but then once it explodes, maybe the diamond has all those properties within it or something. It's not really explained. It doesn't seem like, but that's
yeah. I mean, when Selena grabs it, messing around with science is a good way to get yourself an origin. You'd think Dr. Fong would have had to like watch a training video or something, maybe a film strip at that point.
Right, Chris. What do you think of the first issue, man?
A good start to this story. I thought I want to like kind of praise this cover. I think this is my favorite Sleepwalker cover.
It's impactful, dude.
Where it's just a close up of Sleepwalker's head, and he's just literally ripping his head apart, and with like a stark white background.
You like it better than the cover where you could punch out your own Sleepwalker mask?
Wait, that's the thing? I'm looking that up right now.
I think it's number 19.
Oh, I'm in a cover browser checking it out. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's also obviously a classic Sleepwalker cover. But just for the image, I'm going to go with this one. And really, all of these, all the covers of this storyline are pretty sweet, I think. We talked about Brett Blevins earlier. I'm actually not a big fan of his art. I think it works really well in Sleepwalker because of how weird a lot of the characters are and a lot of stuff with the mindscape, especially a lot of the stuff in this storyline with him, seeing different things and trying to warp reality. But like, I remember when he went over to Ghost Rider, I was reading that at the time too, and I was like, oh no. I didn't think he fit Ghost Rider well at all. And I want to say I read some of the Batman books maybe that he had done too. Was he maybe on those during like the Night Quest and all that stuff going on?
Yep. Yeah. He was he was as one of the main artists for the character during Night's End.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't really like him on anything really except for Sleepwalker, but I do think his art is like perfect for this book. So I'll give him credit for that and for Prime.
Yeah.
I didn't actually make the mask. I wouldn't deface my comic like that.
I would have been the same way.
I happen to know somebody who did use the mask.
Oh, is he named Chris Armstrong?
Oh, we'll get to it. But yeah, the only other things I really had for this first issue, because it's basically mostly a lot of setup stuff. I do like Evan mentioning the creepy smile Sleepwalker ends up with. I mean, that he should never smile. That's just really unsettling. I really like the lettering, especially I noticed in a lot of these issues, whenever Sleepwalker, when he raises his voice, they have that really large lettering in the large word balloons that really kind of sells all of his emotion with those when he gets really angry. Yeah, and about the only thing else I really had was Spectra. Great job on the costume design for Spectra. Excellent, really unique costume.
Right. They make sure.
12-year-old Chris was an even bigger fan of it, I'll tell you that.
They make sure to cover all the important parts that can keep that Comics Code Authority stamp right on the front.
Yeah, for anybody who's listening who hasn't actually read this, she's basically nude with some color
I call it vapor. We'll go with
swirls
vapor.
of color kind of, swarming around her, covering up her naughty bits.
Right. And he called her Spectra. That is who Selena becomes after grabbing the diamond. It explodes and she becomes the being named Spectra. Now, they don't name her at the end of the first issue, but I mean, when you get to the cover of the second, it's kind of obvious. Like, we're going to have a new superhero, supervillain. Well, we'll have to find out when we get to the second issue of this. What'd you send here, Chris? Let me look. Oh my gosh, that's an even bigger picture of the of that face. That is a crazy looking mask.
That was my profile picture about 10 years ago.
No, I had to click on it and I was like, I thought it was the cover again. No,
I can't believe you did that to a comic book, sir.
That was when I was working at the local comic store, and I would a lot of times just like file through the dollar comics and just read, random stuff. And I came across one of those and I was like, yeah, I'm wearing this mask.
Oh.
With your original copy of Sleepwalker 19 bagged and boarded safely away.
I probably have a copy. I'm not certain, but I'll bet I do.
What?
Are we picking panels?
Oh, let's do it. I'll go first. Let me look.
I'll go last because I forgot we did this.
I always forget. Chris comes through and is like, oh, yeah, we need to do this. I'll take the opening splash page. This first splash page kind of brings me back into Sleepwalker. Like, what's he all about? Well, he's there. You get these two characters on the front. You see Inner Child Rick and you see Sleepwalker kind of going through what appears to be this portal of some sort into the mindscape, which is completely filled with random stuff. Like this looks like a kid's treehouse almost. It's got a Triceratops toy there, a football, basketball. Tom Sawyer's laying there. Tarzan of the Apes, and then looks like he's got some Star Wars stuff there. All pretty cool. There you go. That's mine. So what's yours there, Chris?
I'm gonna go with the splash page. It's actually pages 15 and 16. I'm gonna go with that middle image of the super creepy smiling Sleepwalker, looking kind of like the Joker.
Oh, yeah, that is disturbing, dude. Good pick. You'll get to go first the rest of these rounds because you have all your stuff figured out. I'm afraid I'm going to take your stuff. All right, Evan Bevins, take a look. Tell me what you think.
I was on that splash page, but if we're going with individual panels, the moment Sleepwalker comes crashing back to reality when he gets the purse to the face, is you can kind of feel that one.
Yep. I'll go with that. All right. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we will get into issue 14. This is part 2, The Color of Pain. Again, same creative team. Doesn't look like anything's changed here. So as Selena uses her newfound powers as Spectra, she heads to the sky for an escape while Sleepwalker follows. In a seedy part of town, Selena tells her boyfriend he cannot have the diamond as he is a good-for-nothing drug addict, and she is now calling herself Spectra. When Sleepwalker finally catches up, she uses all of her powers. Evan, can you give me an idea what kind of power she has?
Well, it's basically all the powers of the different colors of light that Dr. Fong was talking about, like red is hot, blue is cold. Let's see, solid light with the force of a battering ram is the pink one. Okay. And then she makes it razor sharp. It's not as well defined as some of them, but I know on the cover and then again in the panel you have the red light is like kind of burning him up and the blue light is putting ice on him.
They're definitely weapons at her disposal. Using all of her powers against Sleepwalker here. And when Sleepwalker is nearly defeated, he is able to grab a mirror to bounce her powers back at her, giving him an opening. But she soon bathes him in that sweet orange light, leaving Sleepwalker euphoric as she makes her escape. Sleepwalker arises and begins to turn the cityscape into something that resembles the mindscape. But then Rick begins to awaken and Sleepwalker is pulled back into the actual mindscape. Enraged, Sleepwalker begins forcing his way around Rick's mind, attempting to get him to become unconscious again so he may be free. But when he succeeds and rematerializes in the real world, Sleepwalker sees he has made Rick collapse to the ground. Taking Rick to the only person he believes can help, Sleepwalker carries him to Dr. Fong. Meanwhile, at the Office of Insufficient Evidence, Colonel Tolliver Smith gets word they are shutting him down due to some recent events after his hunt for Sleepwalker resulted in some collateral damage. He's told he can continue his search, but he must keep it a low profile. So he reaches out to the Thought Police. The next time we see them, the Thought Police are at the door of the Fantastic Four for their assistance. Chris, why don't you do your best to explain who the Thought Police are?
They seem to be agents of the, what was it called again? The Office of Insufficient Evidence. Yeah, but they're basically agents of the government who are supposed to bring in Sleepwalker kind of because this guy's got a mad on for him. And one of them is named Wiretap. And he seems to have some electric powers. And then there's Nightstick, who's a big black guy who has these two big, essentially two big sticks that come out of like these things around his wrist that he clubs people with. What was the woman's name?
Cuffs.
Who
apparently is the female version of the Trapster.
Yeah, exactly. She shoots out this gummy type, sort of like a gummy or bubble gum type substance that like people get entrapped in and stuff like that.
Yes, this is the first of their 3 appearances.
Wow. The Thought
Police. They're due for a Disney Plus cameo soon, I'm sure.
So Tolliver is now recruiting the Thought Police, and oh my goodness, we end up on the steps of the Fantastic Four. What in the world could we be in for next issue? Well, all right, so we've reached the end of the second issue in this story.
I like how they set up. Is her name Selena? Is that right?
Selena Spectre.
Selena Slate. Yeah.
Selena.
It's an alliterative name. The doctor should have known she was going to get powers.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They kind of set up how her boyfriend is like, this is Sleepwalker's future. Basically, he's a junkie, and now that Selena's got the power, she can finally kind of see like how worthless he is, and she quickly ditches him or whatever. I really like the Office of Insufficient Evidence. That totally sounds like a government agency in a comic book. Like, it's perfect.
Right.
I don't know what that actually means or what that office would actually do. I guess they're like, we're going to go after criminals. We don't have any proof that they did anything bad, but we assume that they're evil.
Seems like a nastier version of the X-Files.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in this issue with Blevins doing what I think he's best at, which is showing Sleepwalker, warping a bunch of stuff, trying to recreate the mindscape on Earth. There's especially that one big splash page where he's doing it to like the whole street. And, the unfortunates on the street there are like really impressed at his handiwork. There's so many big like splash pages and like big panels that like you kind of tear right through it. But right. The fight between Spectra and Sleepwalker is really cool. And I like the cover. Another really cool cover where it's got Spectra and Sleepwalker, fighting on the cover. And something I didn't notice until I read this again is she's got the 2 beams coming out of the diamond, and the blue beam, if you look at Sleepwalker, like you can see his arm and chest are like frosting over, and then the red or orange, whatever other beam is going up sort of where it, like to the top of his head where his hood is, like all that's in flames. So you kind of see the kind of power she's working with and stuff.
Evan Bevins, tell me about this second issue here, or second part of this story, Color Blindness. What are your notes?
Well, we've got there seems to be a drug addiction metaphor happening. Even before, there's definite parallels with her boyfriend, but even as Sleepwalker is following them, you get this close up of these 2 guys down in the alley, and Sleepwalker talks about she should be easy to find among the wretches that inhabit this wasteland of human misery. And it's like, that's kind of the road you're headed down, buddy.
Right.
So the fight is very cool. You get to see Sleepwalker's powers in action. I don't know what the purple light does, but it seems unpleasant there. So that's a cool fight going through there. But Chris is right. A lot of cool action, but not a whole lot to discuss in there. I noticed the what you were talking about earlier, where he talks about a particular color of light, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what color of light. I was like, what are they what are they hinting at? What are they not telling us? Yeah. Was it brown light? Is it heroin? Is that what we're going for?
Oh, right.
I think I'm overthinking it though. And I joked a little about the drug metaphor, but I mean the idea that Sleepwalker is putting Rick's life in danger to get back out there and get this light. That's a pretty interesting twist. Probably wasn't what 12-year-old Evan was expecting of his heroes to do.
Right.
It may not be a deeply complex story, but it's telling a good story. You got lots of cool action in there.
The theme of the drug addiction here. Now, one of the things that right as I started reading this, I had just finished a show called The Corner with my wife. Now, have you guys ever heard of The Corner?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So, have you guys heard of The Wire?
I have.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think Mark mentioned it once.
Yeah, he might have. Mark is absolutely obsessed with The Wire. Well, prior to the predecessor to The Wire, David Simon did a show called The Corner. There's also a book called The Corner, and what it is, while The Wire focuses on the police part of trying to address the drug problem, The Corner is just a 6-episode HBO series that released, and it was just focusing on a family dealing with their own drug addiction and their son's involvement with drugs. It is the most depressing thing that I've seen. I'll just say that. It's inner city Baltimore. These people, living in there, addicted to heroin. You see these people struggle trying to go through rehab and then get out of it. So I watched that, and I legitimately sat down here and started reading this story, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, this is a comic book that, yeah, just like you said, Evan, this is going into kids' hands. 12-year-old Evan gets a hold of Sleepwalker. The problem is that this message needs to be told, especially to kids. They need to be warned about what the dangers are.
It's not inappropriate to kids at all. It's
right. It's a
what a novel concept that kids would read comics.
Yeah, and a good message could be conveyed through said comic. So yeah, watching Sleepwalker just ruin the one thing that kind of, I mean, it is important to his being. Rick Sheridan is probably important to him, considering, I mean, I don't know if Rick Sheridan dies, I would assume Sleepwalker's not going to be just hanging around there anywhere. He's going to be affected in some way, whether it be emotionally or physically. But he doesn't care. He's like, I need more of that. And he potentially destroys everything around him in order to get to it. I don't know. As far as understanding what drugs do to a person, they're getting that across, I think, pretty well here. The addiction is something that people struggle with and try to get away from, but, it overtakes them. And Sleepwalker, who knows? Maybe his race, there is no drugs. There has never been drugs. You never know. I mean, he's obviously overcome by the brilliance of this light, and he's not saying, oh, this reminds me of this or this reminds me of that. It's just something brand new to him. It's a brand new sensation, and he wants more, and he's got to have more. So,
I mean, he doesn't even have a nose to snort stuff with. So,
right. Okay, Chris, tell me about what your panel is here. Which one'd you pick? Chris is going to have all the good ones. You son of a gun.
I went for a more of an understated one this time.
All right,
which is just page 6, panel 2, which is where he's trying to find Selena, and he sees the light coming out of the window, and he kind of he uses this warp beam to warp the window and make it large enough where he can actually fit through it.
Oh yeah, I was wondering what in the world he was doing there.
It's a warp beam.
True. I had no clue what it was called until you guys told me tonight. So.
Yeah, if you look at the next panel, it's actually, the window's actually big enough where he can kind of float in there.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot more sense. I thought he was bringing the building out. But yeah, that makes a lot more sense. It's the window, for crying out loud. Give me that diamond.
I'm going with, on the next page from Chris's, page 7, panel 3. Spectre's trying to stab him with the razor sharp beams of light, and he warps a wall out. And then, you're watching him deflect the light, but he ripped out the wall of somebody's apartment, and there's this very cartoon-looking surprised woman just sitting there off to the side, and she almost seems in more detail than the rest of the panel. So It's like, I know I'm supposed to be watching Sleepwalker, defending himself, but I'm like, I got to feel bad for that lady.
She's taking a shower. I don't know if that's.
Oh yeah, maybe I didn't say that. Yeah, but it's like hey, that's that may be more attention to the collateral damage of the battle than we saw in the entirety of Man of Steel. But anyway. I know. Get over it. It's okay. Sorry, Henry Cavill.
You don't have to get over it.
My panel. Let me take a look here. Let's do the panel where Sleepwalker is potentially ripping apart Rick Sheridan's mind. Yeah. He's got a hold of whatever these strands are. Like, I mean, the thing is that the mindscape is so weird. I have no idea what he's getting a hold of. Like, is it actually brain matter he's got in his hands, or is it some kind of, just like you said there earlier, Evan, is this something that's like a different realm, but it affects him obviously in some way? You have no idea. You just see Sleepwalker grabbing and potentially ripping and tearing. And he's yelling, if you have no intention of rip and tear. If you have no intention of helping me, then stay out of my way.
But I remember reading this as a kid, and even now, I mean, you can like feel that. I mean,
right.
That's pretty visceral. I mean, in the effect it's having on Rick, that's a very effective panel.
Right. Let's go ahead. We'll get into our third part of this story, Journey to the Center of the Mind, and this was issue Sleepwalker number 15, cover dated August of 1992. All right, here we go. At Four Freedoms Plaza, Reed Richards is helping the Thought Police attempt to find and bring in Sleepwalker by using a machine that will allow them to go into the dimension of the mindscape. Now, I don't know if I put this in my synopsis, but just to kind of be clear, Tolliver is not upfront specifically with Reed as to what they're doing. So it's not like Tolliver went in and said, hey, we need to go into this kid's head and bring out this alien. He is I think he spins it by just giving him Reed the coordinates for this dimension. Reed's like, oh, okay, all right, well, I'll follow those coordinates. There you go. So Reed is not intentionally going into Rick's mind. Just be aware of that. He's going with them, thinking they're going into another dimension. We'll put it that way. So meanwhile, Sleepwalker continues to battle his addiction to the orange color of light, and he is racked with guilt as we learn that Rick is actually in a coma from Sleepwalker forcing his way out. When Sleepwalker gets word that Rick's condition is worsening, he looks to find a way to make it right and heads to the hospital. Rick's dog, Rambo, licks Rick's cheek. Boy, I can't say that 5 times fast. Licks Rick's cheek. He briefly awakens, and Sleepwalker goes back into the mindscape where he is met with Rick's subconsciousness, who tells him that his mind is under attack, pointing out Richards and the Thought Police as invaders. Confronting them, the Thought Police look to detain Sleepwalker. Reed is confused as to why the Thought Police are so aggressive battling Sleepwalker and steps in when they say they are going to execute him. Sleepwalker begins to realize their presence is actually causing Rick's mind to deteriorate even further, which causes Reed to see. Now, at that point, that's when Reed realizes, we're actually in somebody's mind, not in another dimension, as Colonel Smith spun it. As Reed tries to have them all returned, Wiretap blocks the signal, and only Richards leaves the mindscape. As Rick's mind begins to fall apart, Sleepwalker is sucked into a hole, while Reed looks on from the real world, believing that the mind they were just in is no more. And that is the end of our third part of this story.
Yeah, a little confusing when you start off because it doesn't pick up right where it left off. But, we see that Sleepwalker is a mess. From his condition coming down off his light high, and feeling awful about what he did to Rick. Love seeing the Thing show up, and he gets some good lines in, giving Tolliver a hard time. Nice to see. Maybe the Thought Police are a little overbearing, but it's cool to see that they keep Reed Richards heroic, and he's not just following along with what they're doing. So I guess the overbearing government operative bit is a little cliche, but they make it work here pretty well. They have a really good use of the gimmick with Sleepwalker disappearing when Rick's awake. even though he's only briefly awake. But that they have that where the cops are coming in to find him, and Rambo licks his cheek, and he wakes up long enough for Sleepwalker to disappear. So that's using that story element, maybe tweaking it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was a really good cliffhanger there at the end. With it looking like Rick's dead. I mean, as if we all believe anybody dies in the comics, but it's like, well, this is where Sleepwalker lives, and if he's in Rick's mind when it shuts down, what the heck's going to happen to him? I all in all thought it was a good fun issue.
If I was an artist, I probably would have said 3 issues is all I could do trying to draw Wiretap suit. Because that looks like it had to have been a chore just to try and draw all these little wires surrounding this guy coming off of his arms. And it is one of the craziest actual designs I think I've ever seen. There's been some crazy costume designs, but that is a weird choice. I understand what they're doing. He's doing it well. I'm not saying that it's done well, but man, I'm sure that it had to have annoyed him. But then again, he might have just been like, I'll just do a bunch of scribbles. Yeah. And
maybe that's why the Thought Police didn't appear more often.
Yeah, I'm surprised Wiretap did not get killed at the end of their third appearance here.
I also wanted to say I really do like Brett Blevins' take on the Thing. I think he draws a great Ben Grimm. And then the other thing, and I'm overthinking this, I mean, they're the Thought Police. They're in somebody's mind, especially because they have to go to Mr. Fantastic for help. Dropping into people's minds can't be what they usually do. So did Tolliver just come up with this? We're going to call them the Thought Police, or again, they didn't appear anywhere else, so we don't know. But if they go on some other mission, does he give them a thematically appropriate team name? Because otherwise, it makes sense for this one mission,
right?
But nowhere else. So I wonder.
They changed their names based on the mission they're going into.
Yeah, it's if we're going to look for the Loch Ness Monster, or we're going to call them the Lakers or something. I don't know.
I like that. That's hilarious. One of the things that I don't think they go into it a whole lot, but I mean, it's definitely present. Sleepwalker does not like what he's done. He understands that what he has done has endangered the life of somebody that he cares about. A lot of times when you see a drug addict, the only thing that you see is the part of somebody who's addicted to that drug. What you don't see is the guilt that this person feels, the fact that they are aware that they are a drug addict. Going through that and obviously acknowledging it and trying to move past it in some way, that's a tough thing to do. It's probably one of the hardest things to do, as a matter of fact. It's hard to acknowledge that you have a problem and then try to get help for that problem. Mm-hmm. So Sleepwalker going through this, again, kudos to our storytellers here, because they're doing a fairly decent job of at least getting a lot of the elements of drug addiction into this story. You don't know what's in store for Sleepwalker. From here on out, he may be a drug addict. Oh, let's try it again. From here on out, he might be a light addict. Is he going to get past it? We don't know. But obviously, he's hurt somebody that he loves, and he feels really, really bad about it. Anyway, what are your notes there, Chris?
Another cool cover. This is probably the weakest cover of these books, but I do like the touch of Nightstick whacking Sleepwalker in the face, and you can actually see blood kind of flinging from his mouth. And it's got all the Thought Police using their powers or whatever. But yeah, I like that cover, even though it's probably the weakest one of these 4. But we haven't talked much about the stuff going on with Alyssa, Rick's ex-girlfriend. She's got this new guy that she's seeing. He kind of pops up in a few of the issues. His name's Whitney. And this guy is like a Cal from Titanic level douchebag.
Oh, yeah, man. He is a sleaze ball.
Yeah. So no wonder, Alyssa's visiting him in the hospital, and he's trying to pull her away, because he's double parked.
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, Rick's laying there in a coma. He's like, come on, Alyssa, I'm double parked downstairs. Grabs her by the hand. It's like, dude, come on. Yeah. And then he says, say goodbye to the veg head?
Yeah, he says you may as well be talking to a block of cement anyway.
Oh, my God.
He's in a coma. So, yeah, total D-bag.
Flash Thompson's like, too much, dude, too much.
Exactly.
We don't get a resolution to that story in here, if I remember correctly.
I don't think so.
No.
You tell me that this guy gets some kind of comeuppance in this in this series, right? it happens? You guys
I don't
remember?
remember, but that's not the last we see of him.
Okay, all right. Well, then that'll keep me reading then.
Evan kind of talked about them already, but the Thought Police, those are like some of the great, and there are a lot of them, so they're not, singular, but some of the great like lost villains of the 90s. Those guys who there were so many comics coming from, especially Marvel and DC, that pumping out new characters left and right, and a lot of them, like the Thought Police, they show up in 3 issues of Sleepwalker. That's it. They never come back even for a cameo. Like 8-Ball even shows up in some cameos later in other books. But these guys are kind of cool characters that I thought probably should have. I mean, at some point you would think they would use them again, in some kind of storyline, even though they're kind of, generic, cheesy villains in their way. The film's famous example is probably like the Marvel annuals from, what was it, 94? When every annual had a new character debut, and like none of them ever appeared again except for like Annex. And,
I had Annex number
Jen
1.
Svel, maybe the second Captain Marvel, or the third, or whatever, the son of the original Captain Marvel. Those were like the only 2 characters that ever, I think, appeared again out of all those annuals. At least that's what I'd heard at one point. But yeah, also from the Thought Police, Wiretap. Is this the biggest dweeb that's ever been given superpowers?
Oh my gosh.
He's pretty well put together as far as his physique and everything, but like he's got this orange red hair, and he's got the overbite. He looks like Jimmy Olsen's nerdy cousin.
He does too, man. Like I said,
Jimmy Olsen.
what a costume design that guy has.
Yeah.
I mean, it is off the chain, like so. Wires on the outside of your suit. All right, I get it. Wiretap. You're good to go, sir.
Also,
for Jesse to go to a con cosplaying as Wiretap.
I would love to do that, man. I put about 500 hours into this costume, and nobody have any idea who I am.
Go up to Bob Budiansky's table, and he's like, "Who are you supposed to be?"
Right.
Brett Blevins, can I get a picture? Well, why?
The only other thing I really had was there was a panel where Ben Grimm is talking about how they're about to fade. The mind there is about to fade from existence. And Tolliver, is that the bureaucrat's name?
Yeah.
In the background, is he supposed to look like Hitler?
I had the same thought. I
there's
think
like
it's just the
shading
shadow
under
of
his
the
nose that kind of looks like a mustache, and he's got like a Hitler hair thing going.
Yeah. It's more than a passing resemblance.
Yeah. But yeah, really cool cliffhanger where it basically, Reed just flat out says that mind is no more, and Sleepwalker, is sucked into oblivion. So
then tell me what you got for a panel there, Chris.
I'm going small again. Page 5, panel 5, the last panel, which is just Ben Grimm face to face with Tolliver with the cigarette, right up to his nose. I just like that image of Ben giving him the business a little bit.
Okay, is it my turn, Evan, or is it yours? Which one?
You can go ahead. Armstrong took mine.
Well, let's see if I can take your backup. Here we go. You've got the double page spread where Reed and the Thought Police are kind of floating through the ether of, the mindscape. Bottom right-hand corner is Rick Sheridan's younger inner child who is preparing an attack, and there is definitely Gumby in the back left. Now, I'm sure that I could probably, if I did a little bit of research, the dude with the 3 horns on his head, that's probably a reference to something. I know that Reed names like some of these toys, but I have a feeling they were fake, but I don't know. Tell me. Or are they Marvel properties?
He referred to them as Star Warriors. I assumed it was a Star Wars reference. That they reminded him of Franklin's Star Warriors toys.
Yeah, one of them's clearly got a RoboCop helmet as well.
Yes. Yeah, when they're coming in. Right. Yeah, it's that next panel. But yeah, as menacing as that looks, we got Gumby in the back. That's a shadowy Gumby is about ready to launch an attack on these guys. So there's my panel. What do you got there, Evan?
Well, my backup was everything starting to come unraveled. Reed and Ben know the Thought Police are up to no good, and then Sleepwalker makes his dramatic entrance. Too close for you, human. All of you, get out or suffer the consequences.
Get out. You
just got Sleepwalker, pointing, calling him out, striking the hero pose there.
Looking every bit of 8 feet tall.
All right, dude.
Hey, he's only 7 feet tall, though.
I did want to mention one more thing I forgot about in the issue. When Sleepwalker and the doctor go to visit Rick at the hospital, they bring Rambo in with them, and the nurse is like, "Hey, you can't bring that dog in here," before she even sees Sleepwalker.
Oh, right.
And Sleepwalker's like, "Please watch Rambo for me, Dr. Fong. I do not wish to break any rules." And then he just walks back to visit Rick, and then the nurse calls security or whatever. But the doctor and Sleepwalker both are acting like it's totally normal for this 7-foot alien to be walking through the hospital.
That's great. All right. Okay. Well, let's get into our conclusion. The mind is no more. Oh, the title of the next story is Brain Dead. Looks like our team stays the same, although no, I'm.
I think Manley only did the inking on the first 2 parts.
Oh, really?
And Blevins does. In the second 2 parts, Blevins is just listed as artist instead of penciler and then an inker. So I assume Blevins is inking his own stuff in the last 2 parts.
Yeah, you're right. All right, here we go. So Sleepwalker, number 16, cover dated September of 1992. As Rick Sheridan's family looks on, his doctor declares him brain dead with little hope of recovery. Inside Rick's mind, cuffs, nightstick, and wiretap are still searching for Sleepwalker, but some unlikely help has arrived in the form of Rick Sheridan, his current self. I put just current form, but it looks like Rick has come into the mindscape now, or obviously it's not his inner child anymore. So we'll just put it that way. It looks like his present self. Hard to explain ethereal stuff like that, but there you go. Sleepwalker explains that he may be responsible for Rick's current state due to the addiction he had to the light. Rick doesn't take this so well and uses his mind to subdue and trap Sleepwalker. Seeing this manifestation of his own mental power, Rick decides to confront the thought police on his own and does a good job of doing so until he becomes very tired all of a sudden. That's because Rick's brain is failing. Sleepwalker has to try to escape Rick's traps and finds himself in a part of his mind that is full of junk. But he's able to barely escape and heads to try to save Rick. When he finds Rick, he hits him, knocking him out and freeing the thought police from the restraints. They immediately attack Sleepwalker. However, Sleepwalker is as strong as ever and is able to defeat them, causing Wiretap to pull the plug for the thought police to return to the real world, out of Rick's mind. When Rick awakens, Sleepwalker explains that when Rick was using his powers, now when I say awakens, what I mean is when he awakens in the mindscape, Sleepwalker explains that when Rick was using his powers, it was hastening his brain failure, causing more harm than good. Sleepwalker thanks Rick for reaffirming his mission to protect innocence, but tells him he needs to get back to the physical plane. Rick's family is overwrought with joy when Rick awakens out of his coma at the hospital. When the thought police materialize in Four Freedoms Plaza, they are about to be clobbered. But what's some slick talking about government protection by Colonel Tolliver Smith, they are able to leave unharmed. Now, I'm not saying this. I'm going to let Chris Armstrong say this. What is the next issue going to be, Chris?
Well, it's none other than the long-awaited Darkhawk Sleepwalker crossover.
That's right. Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, Spider-Man also popping in.
The first thing I want to ask, Evan, real quick, can you give me your best idea what in the world? Again, the mindscape is so crazy, but Sleepwalker gets thrown into this junk realm that starts getting I'm just going to say it's almost like a black hole. Is that probably a decent description?
And the only reason I'm going to be able to explain this is because as I was flipping through, found a page that I totally missed reading. The part where Sleepwalker yells, "I am being sucked into a whirlpool of junk," that's the stuff that Rick's forgetting.
Okay. All right. And
so there's 2 girls in there that he went on one date, each, nothing particularly memorable. And so they're being forgotten.
I know artists do this all the time, but somebody gives you a prompt that says, okay, I want you to draw somebody forgetting something. You're like, well, how do I do that? And that's what you get, which is a neat way. And the other thing is you also got to think that Rick's brain trauma is probably causing a lot of this too.
Yeah.
The fact that he's in a coma, his brain is failing, a lot of this stuff is being forgotten because, well, his brain is just dealing with what's going on.
Yeah. And I think Sleepwalker ended up in there because he was, trapped in that endless maze of doors. So he rips through the wall between them, which is how he got in this predicament in the first place. But I mean, Mindscape isn't exact science, so
Yeah, he's still trying to figure it out.
good climax to the story. You get Sleepwalker getting all the way back to his heroic role, monologuing about why he succumbed to the temptation of hard light to begin with, just sort of spelling out the arc of the story. And again, if this is something, and it seems like it was aimed at, I mean, maybe not necessarily the youngest kids, but was written, with an idea that some, preteens or whatever will be reading it. It doesn't hurt to maybe spell that out a little bit. The cover was really cool. It set up more of a conflict between Rick and Sleepwalker than I guess we really got. Rick kind of acting a little unbalanced there, trying to be the action hero type. I will say, Rick, action hero patter could use some work. Where they're blasting him, and he's like, "Your electrical attack has no effect as long as I'm not grounded." Which, first of all, so I guess physics only work in Rick's mind when he says that, which actually makes sense. Wirecat
Right.
blasts him, and he's like, "I don't believe it'll hurt me, so it won't." He says, "It doesn't work when I'm grounded. You guys, on the other hand, are grounded to the max."
To the max, baby.
And then there is something about Sleepwalker. I don't know. I mean, comics have long been known for having some obvious dialogue, but just yelling, "I am being sucked into a whirlpool of junk." I don't know. It is an accurate description of what's happening. He certainly has every right to be distressed, but I don't know. Just the way he chose to describe it. I don't know. Maybe he wants Rick to hear him. But I did think the stuff with the doors when he kept going through the different doors and was stuck in that part of Rick's mind. I thought that was a pretty cool visual. But I mean, overall, I really liked Blevin's art in a lot of this. But this issue just it's not as tight. I don't know if it feels a little rushed. I mean, as I always say, anytime I offer any critique of art, it's light years better than anything I could do. But I don't know, some of it doesn't seem quite as tight. Even the stuff with the Thing and Reed, it feels kind of rushed. I don't know, not quite up to the quality of the other issues.
Can we please just take a moment real quick on that splash page where he is getting sucked into the whirlpool of junk?
Yes.
And describe some of the very odd things that are happening on that page. Like, I would never, ever in my life forget that deer with an arrow going through its mouth into its stomach. Like, I will remember that for the rest of my life. Pinocchio with an elephant nose and webbed feet. It's like an amalgamation of all of the Disney characters all at once.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even notice that one, and I'm trying to figure out the kids walking in the cemetery. I'm wondering if that's like a reference to some movie or something.
It really is just random. Like, there's a cheeseburger and fries. All right. I mean,
yeah, some of that they put so much detail into it, like the Pinocchio thing. There's got to be more specific references to some of that, or like the looks like an action figure with an alien with 4 arms and a sword
that looks actually really familiar for some reason. It has a pistol.
I think that's one of the Martians from John Carter.
Okay.
Is it really?
Probably in reference to it at the very least. Well, and it looks like down there, bottom left over a piece of pizza, it looks like the kid from Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah, it's definitely
Did you guys mention Astro?
Astro
the dog from the Jetsons.
The Jetsons, yeah.
He's underneath the Martian there.
Yeah.
Who's the frog?
It reminds me of Mr. Toad from Wind in the Willows.
That's what I'm thinking. Oh, I finally saw. I'm looking on the wrong side of the page. I see Astro down there. How you gonna figure Astro?
But yeah, I mean, it brings the story full circle. Sleepwalker overcomes his addiction and stuff. I just it feels like it wraps up a little quickly, like where Sleepwalker and Rick are talking. Rick's like, "I'll try not to be so untrusting of you from now on," and I'm like, he did almost kill you. It's good that you forgive him and recognize that he's seen the error of his ways, but I'm not really sure this is an equal. Oh, hey, we had a misunderstanding.
Right. The whole wrapped up pretty quickly thing. I mean, I would like. Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, it takes a little bit more to get out of drug addiction than just shaking it off like old Sleepwalker does.
They did say in one of the, and I don't know if it was this issue or the one before, but they said something about that Sleepwalker kind of heals when he goes back into Rick's mind or something.
He does, right? Yeah, because he is immediately like ready to go as soon as he's back in.
So that might have sort of explained some of it. I don't remember. I don't think I put that in my notes, but I remember them saying that, and I thought, well, maybe that's why of course, he was still feeling the effects of it when he came in, so it's more one of those convenient writing things that it's like, okay, this is the story we're telling, but we're not going to have Sleepwalker hooked on light for the rest of the series, whatever. So it was pretty quick, but there's almost maybe a little way to explain that away. Take a retroactive no prize on that one.
I'm being unreasonable and saying, hey, this has got to be, he's got to be addicted to drugs from here on out. How you guys aren't telling a true story.
This story about the alien living in the college student's mind is incredibly unrealistic.
Right. As far as the overall story, I had a good time. I got introduced to some characters, some villains that are going to be, that are in Sleepwalker. And we got an appearance by Fantastic Four. So the Fantastic Four showed up here, Reed Richards and specifically Ben Grimm, both. And I don't even know, did we see, I don't even think Johnny Storm or Invisible Woman were in any panels.
Invisible Woman was in every panel. You just
Never mind. Never mind.
No, she was on the last page of issue 14 when Tolliver showed up, but apparently she had stuff to do. I don't know.
Okay.
That was the only time we saw her. But who knows?
Chris, what are your thoughts, man? What's your thoughts on this final one?
Again, I like the cover. I always like it when we get some word balloons on a cover. I wouldn't like it if they did it all the time, but when it's done sparingly, it's always kind of a cool treat, I think. I mean, it never happens anymore. The image in the price guide box of Sleepwalker's face, just with the hands all in his mouth and grabbing at his face, pretty creepy. It was interesting that Rick just turns on a dime as soon as Sleepwalker tells him, what happened, which, I mean, it's understandable, I guess, that he would be pretty annoyed that Sleepwalker put him into a coma.
Right.
You guys mentioned the tornado of all the stuff he's forgetting, all the junk. Evan specifically pointed out that graveyard thing. That was the one that really stuck out to me, because I assume it must be a reference to, maybe, I've never read it, but maybe it's something Look at This Way Comes, or some famous kid story or something. Where
what would you say the kid in the middle's carrying? Is that like a boombox?
It looks like either a boombox or maybe an old recording device or something.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And the other kid, it looks like maybe has the kid on the right has I can't think what you call those. Well, not a shovel, but a handheld shovel thing. I can't think what those.
A trowel.
Spade, trowel.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's a reference to something specific or not, but that's the one that really stuck out to me when I.
If you have a shovel and you're going to a graveyard.
Yeah.
What is going on here? Yeah, it is a tiny little shovel. They're obviously not doing a whole lot of digging.
Sleepwalker also has a quick moment with a couple of girls that Rick has gone on dates with in the past, and now he's completely forgotten about them. So, man, Rick must be doing pretty good if these two hotties are just once is enough, and then he just completely forgets about them. There was a panel with the doctor. I'm trying to find it now, where he uses the term all extents and purposes. And I was like, that's not a thing. What? To the point that I had to look it up to make sure I wasn't crazy. And
did he mean all intents? Intents?
Yes, apparently, because I Googled it, and apparently that is it's a common corruption of the term intents and purposes. People sometimes say extents and purposes, but this guy's a doctor.
For all extensive purposes.
That is fantastic.
And it's a little disappointing that we don't get any kind of resolution to Spectra. Yeah, we don't see her again after, I guess, the second issue.
It's another addition to the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, but yeah, like Evan said, she does come back later. I haven't read those issues. I guess she comes back as maybe even a love interest or something. Maybe he falls off the wagon as far as the addiction to the light. But
I read that a long time ago, but
yeah, reading these again has made me want to complete my collection and then actually finally read the entirety of the Sleepwalker saga. So maybe I'll get around to that sooner rather than later.
How stoked were you to see next issue Darkhawk?
Pretty excited. I don't remember.
Pretty excited.
Yeah. I don't remember which issue came out first, Sleepwalker 16 or the Darkhawk issue. Actually, I've got that. Let me just check it out right now.
Check it out. You got it.
Handy.
Do it.
That was issue 19. So the same cover month. But in that issue, Sleepwalker actually pops up on the last page. So
I think I read the Darkhawk issue first.
Yeah, I probably knew about about the crossover from the Darkhawk issue. Yeah, pretty excited because those were two of my favorite characters at the time, and they had never, crossed over. Both of the Sleepwalker and Darkhawk, Evan mentioned earlier a lot of the guest stars that showed up in Sleepwalker. The same thing happened in the early Darkhawk issues. They were constantly throwing in guest stars, probably to bump sales. They wanted to throw Ghost Rider in there, Punisher, because those guys are really popular at the time. Especially Spider-Man showed up in both of those series early on, and so it was cool to see them interact with other superheroes, but they'd never been together. So that was really cool and exciting. And I think we're going to do that crossover in a couple of weeks, maybe.
It's on the agenda, that's for sure. We're definitely going to nail down a date, and we got to cover that for sure. All right, it's time to pick a panel.
I got page 13, the second panel, which is Rick fighting the thought police when he uses those yellow thorn strands to just warp their bodies into rubber, basically.
Right.
So yeah, it looks extremely painful and would probably kill them, but they live. So
this is like some murderer.
It's in the mindscape, man.
That's right. This is like some Freddy Krueger Dream Warriors type stuff. Like when these guys that's kind of the feeling that I get. It's like this person's in control of their mind and they can do anything they want, which is really cool. It's actually a great setting or partial setting for a story because you could do anything you want. Brett Blevins is probably doing, he's saying the same thing. He's like, I can do anything I want here, which is pretty cool. All right, who's first here? Was it me or you, Evan?
I think you went first last time, but I'm good either way. I've got two choices, so if you want to go ahead.
All right.
Or if not, I've got my clear front runner. If
I'm taking the slap.
That was mine.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that is worthy of. I mean, could you imagine like owning the original art for something like that? I mean,
oh, man, nice.
it would be so sweet. It's just Sleepwalker backhanding. It doesn't punch. I think I said punch earlier. He is backhanding Rick so hard that Rick has actually left his feet and he is flying backwards. And I mean, Sleepwalker is now. Granted, he looks. He definitely doesn't look as menacing as he did earlier.
That panel slaps, as the kids say.
Oh, no.
Did I do that right?
Yeah, sure. I'm editing that out. Yeah, Sleepwalker standing against this yellow background and backhanding Rick Sheridan. I'm taking it. What do you got as a backup? Beat that, Evan Bevan.
Well, I'm going to have to go with Sleepwalker being sucked into a whirlpool of junk. As we dove into the background, I started to appreciate that even more. He's getting the boot there, to be sure. But,
look at all those lines. I mean, how long was that?
Maybe that's why some of the other pages look kind of rushed.
Yeah, right.
Do we think
I'm still working.
Dorothy's house back there?
It could very well be. What is the stuff in the top left? It looks like webbing and people hanging out of it.
I think it's the people in a net.
Okay, that could be. And that's what makes this. I mean, it's a good panel. It's definitely a good page, Evan. I mean, because there's so much going on. It's mystery after mystery. And I think I would want Bob to explain or Brett to explain, hey, what are every single one of these references?
Yeah.
Please give me the footnotes. All right. I think we've reached the end. By the way, this is your brain on drugs. 1987 was the first airing of that 30-second PSA. My goodness, did it have staying power?
Yeah. I would have thought it was earlier, actually. But yeah, it was around it got remade, I guess, in the mid-90s. But yeah.
Yeah.
To wrap up, I really like this story. I think it's the first multi-part Sleepwalker story outside of, I think, a two-parter that he had with Sleepwalker, maybe. I mean, with Spider-Man. It shows kind of, the mindscape stuff, or at least the inside of Rick's mind. And it showcases a lot of Sleepwalker's powers. And it's got the wacky villains that Sleepwalker's kind of known for. So it's kind of a classic Sleepwalker story to me. Wow. Not as wacky as some of the early villains that he dealt with.
I definitely had fun with it. It felt a little. I mean, nowadays everything gets multi-part stories. The better to collect in a trade, I guess. It's like Beast gets a hairball, part 3 of 7. I don't know. It was a good story. It seemed like for that time it was maybe a bit of a stretch to give it a part 404 and things like that. I don't know. It was a good story. Didn't quite reach that epic scale that I thought the multi-part things were for. But I mean that's just me being picky. It's a fun story.
Yeah, good message behind it. This is early '90s, and I mean, for an early '90s story, it hits on a good message. We have an intense ride here that we're going along with Sleepwalker on all the way through. Finding a new drug, becoming a drug addict in some way, and then getting over it, and then dealing with the consequences of what he's done because of that addiction. So, all in all, we get a good message and we get a good story. We get some new villains out of this. For a new character that's this, just over a year, most likely since his debut, you can't really ask for anything more. All right, well, let's go ahead. We will get into plugs. So, Chris Armstrong, we'll start with you, man. What do you got going on here lately, and what can we expect from you here in the future? Tell us all about it.
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BrodyMan34. I've got a podcast I do with my buddy AJ where we cover direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. It's called Small Screeners. You can find that on any podcast platform. You can also find Small Screeners on Instagram and Twitter at Small Screeners.
What was the last episode you guys did? Because I know I listened to it, but I can't remember.
The last one we did was on the Second Civil War, which was Joe Dante HBO movie from 97, I think. Either later tonight or tomorrow night, we're going to be recording our next episode on Doll Man versus Demonic Toys.
Oh, Tim Thomerson. That's right, baby.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. That is great stuff. All right, Evan Bevins, tell us about where we can. I know we can read you somewhere, and I know you've been on some podcasts, so let the people know about it.
Well, you can find my blog, *51.blogspot.com. I've been reading along with the X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine. Finally wrapped that up. Working my way through, speaking of 90s comics, Secret Defenders. Finally getting into the new territory after I fell off in the 90s reading it, but I've been filling that run out through the back issues. Check that out, and occasionally, Chris, we might find ourselves viewing the same movie at some point, because I also do a semi-regular feature called Dollar Tree Cinema with whatever I can find at the Dollar Tree with some surprisingly good deals every once in a while. Mark and I did a TV party tonight on Moon Knight a while back, and then I know you and I have had to reschedule a few. We've got a couple coming up at some point. Right. We got to figure out a time to get those in.
Yeah, that's right. Thor Volume. It's Thor Volume 1, right?
Goddess of Thunder Volume 1.
Goddess of Thunder. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to be talking Goddess of Thunder Volume 1 there at some point here pretty soon. We also have, Chris, did you say you wanted us to keep you in mind for the new Fantastic Four?
Yeah, if you need me, I'll be there for it. I like that book. The two-parter?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Three-parter? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. Wow. Okay. So I have recorded 4 podcasts. This will be my 4th in the last 3 days.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we did 23rd. It was Thursday the 23rd. I recorded Unspoken Issues with Dean Compton and Emily Scott, his significant other. We sat down and talked Star Trek, The Next Generation, and X-Men. So that's in the can.
Did Mark Silvestri do that?
No, Silvestri did the original one. The original series crossover, which gets referenced because it's whatever crazy continuity that is actually referenced in this. And what's interesting about this is the very end of the issue, the X-Men are dropped off at home and they are looking off panel and they can't believe what they see. And you have no idea what it is because you have to buy the novel Planet X.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I don't think I've read it, but I remember that novel.
Yeah. Michael Jan Friedman, who wrote a ton of Star Trek books, also does Planet X. Yeah, it's a great setup, and the story takes place right after First Contact. I'm saying 1 minute. They say it's 1 minute later after First Contact, the movie. So it's decent. We had a good time talking about it. Let me tell you, we got into a discussion about Borg Sentinels. and what they meant. And it was like a 10-minute discussion, like completely out of the blue of what they were doing and how neat of a concept it was for these creators to do this. So tune in. That'll be airing at some point soon. We recorded also TV Party Tonight on Hell of a Boss episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7. Alexis Hannah and myself discussed that the first 4 episodes of Hell of a Boss a long time ago. Apparently, it's like, I don't know why, but on the network, animation really does well. And this thing gets 100 listens, at least 100 listens or more every. I want to say every month. It could possibly be every week, but I don't. That seems awful high. But I mean, it for some reason, animation does really well. You look at the top 3 podcasts, it's like Hell of a Boss is like number 3. Number 2 is an alternative commentary to Tom and Jerry from the 90s. I don't know why, but it's there. And then I think any I can't remember the top animation one, but I'm sure it's them discussing some Pixar film or something like that. Anyway, Hell of a Boss, it's a YouTube series. Go out, check that out. It's raunchy. It's every single one of them has a warning in the front of what you're getting into. Some language, Evan. We'll just put it that way.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, Source Materials will be airing their discussion on TMNT, The Last Ronin. We finally got together and discussed that 5-issue series. Spoilers, folks. I mean, this is a great story. So just be aware that when you...
I'm sorry, I'm going to say I'm actually going to read that the week after next. I've actually got a vacation week off, not next week, but the following. So I've set aside a bunch of different comics I'm going to read during that time. And
it's
one
good,
of them is
man. It's
finally reading The Last Ronin.
I've read the first 2 issues of that. It's on Hoopla.
Yeah,
so
yeah, man.
I've been reading through that.
It was funny because Benjamin, he's an artist that I've had on before. He's been affiliated with the network, but we've known him for a while. A long time ago, him and I did a review or a discussion about the very first Ninja Turtles comic. And so I reached out to him. I was like, dude, do you want to read do you want to read Last Ronin and talk about it? He's like, yeah, I'll read it. He goes, but I don't know how much I'll have to say about it. Dude, we went for more than 2 hours last night. So we had plenty to say. A lot of good fun there. I will go ahead and give a shout out to my buddies over at Kapow. I've been on quite a few of their episodes here lately. We did a countdown of our top 20 time travel movies. It's in their feed on YouTube. You can find it. That's it. We've done it. Look for us here pretty soon. We'll be coming back, I'm sure, with the Darkhawk Sleepwalker crossover. We'll be discussing that, and we'll be having a good time. So, for Evan Bevins, for Chris Armstrong, I am Jesse Starcher. We'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com and the Rattleitch Broadcasting Network, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.